宝探し RPG ローグギャラクシー
PlayStation.
When it comes to underused settings in JRPGs, and really just video games in general, you might get different answers depending on who you ask. Though I think most people would probably say not generic high fantasy with dwarves and elves and shit, as we got enough of that already. If you were to ask me, however, I have an answer I feel pretty strongly about. That of which I am referring to is the space pirate setting, or space bounty hunter, or space western, or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. This usually involves a charismatic, compelling main character and their ragtag, mishmash group of individuals as they travel throughout the galaxy on their ship for reasons that are dependent on whatever particular story they're in. This was popularized by some anime series such as Cowboy Bebop and Outlaw Star, and even some western shows like Firefly. This subgenre of sci-fi really kinda took off in the 90s for whatever reason. To hardly any complaints though, I'm sure, as every time I talk to someone about it, they always seem to really like the setting as well. It's just so cool, and besides that brief stint in the late 90s and early 2000s, we haven't really gotten a lot like it. In the world of JRPGs, to my knowledge, we've only ever gotten one video game to scratch that itch. And if it isn't obvious enough by now, that is Level 5's Rogue Galaxy. At the time, Level 5 was a fairly new developer, with Rogue Galaxy only being their fourth game ever. Their first two being Dark Cloud and its sequel, Dark Cloud 2, or Dark Chronicle in other countries, and their third one was surprisingly Dragon Quest VIII actually. I found it pretty interesting that when Square Enix hired Level 5 for Dragon Quest VIII, they only had 2 games under their belt by that time. I mean, Dark Cloud did sell quite well, I guess, but I would argue that was more of a product of being at the right place at the right time, with it being a PS2 launch title and the only RPG at that. Dark Chronicle was an improvement in most ways, but still, that's one great game and one kinda good game under their belt before Square Enix decided to say, hey, you guys made a couple pretty good games. You want to take the helm of the newest mainline installments of the series that created JRPGs in the first place? I'm sure there's a really interesting story there of how it all happened, but that's a little outside the scope of this video. But yeah, after the huge critical and commercial success of Dragon Quest VIII, needless to say, Level 5 had more than proven themselves as a developer. So much that its newest IP, Rogue Galaxy, had started to catch some serious hype in the JRPG scene. Rogue Galaxy was initially released in Japan back in December of 2005, however it wouldn't make it to North America until January 2007, that version of which actually being a director's cut with more content than the original Japanese version. This is probably one of the very few occasions that America has actually gotten bonus content before Japan did. Pretty cool. It's been nearly 14 years since its North American release, and coincidentally, also about 14 years since I've last played it. I've been pretty curious to see how it holds up all these years later, so let's stop all this exposition now and just dive into the meat of the content. This is a quick retrospective over Rogue Galaxy. The story of Rogue Galaxy begins with our young hero, Jaster Rogue, super original I know, as he travels around the desert planet Rosa on a weird creature of sorts. Instantly, you know it's a unique world with its own animals, as they easily could have just used a camel or something like that. I love it when games take steps like this to further flesh out their universe. We find out that Jaster was an orphan that grew up here his whole life, and now currently works as a hunter. In the galaxy, there's a huge war going on, which has like a catastrophic effect on the way the story plays out. So in result, the planet Rosa is currently being occupied by the Lungardian forces. Your boy Jaster really wants to travel the galaxy and see space and shit, but since the planet is under lockdown, this is currently not possible. Anyway, after an expository conversation with your adoptive father, where he tries to cope with the fact that the Lungardian forces are there by saying, hey, at least they keep the beasts out of town, a giant beast then breaks into town, prompting Jaster to take action. On his way to do so, he meets up with a mysterious hunter by the name of Desert Claw. Briefly before this though, we catch a scene with the robots and a weird little creature that claim to be looking for this Desert Claw. Apparently they're pirates and have been ordered by their captain to recruit Desert Claw to do pirate shit with, I guess. Before these two parties meet up with each other, however, Desert Claw deuces from the scene, but not before giving Jaster his precious sword first. Yeah, just fling this instrument of death at me from 10 feet away, even though you easily could have just handed it to me. It's fine.
You ain't got no etiquette, motherfucker.
Because Jaster now has the Desert Claw sword, Steve's foolproof robotic technology determines that Jaster, therefore, must be Desert Claw. It's obviously a big misunderstanding, but whatever. Jaster goes for it because... Well, probably to get off the hot-ass planet actually, as he does want to see space. And after taking out that huge beast, he does just that. In the process of boarding the ship, we're treated to a really cool CGI cutscene that shows Jaster running away from a massive-ass monster and getting rescued by Kasala on some pod racer type thing.
Now this is pod racing.
As they smoothly maneuver their way through attacks and just narrowly escape off into the sun. This is one huge praise that I gotta say about the game. The cutscene direction is so awesome and just a spectacle to watch. Thankfully, the cutscene direction is exceptional, as the actual story direction, not so much. Not too long ago, I mentioned there was a huge war going on that has a significant effect on the way the story plays out. Well, those that have already played the game, I'm sure instantly knew that that was just your daily dose of sarcasm. The game makes it seem like the war is gonna be this really big deal, but after the intro, the war rarely ever gets brought up again, and after a certain point, it never does. They pretty much just drop the ball on it completely. I don't really mind this, as we already have enough games based on war. But the way it talks about it so much at first and then stops makes the story just seem a little disjointed and not as focused as it should be. Like, no joke here. Last year I started the game and played it for about 1 to 2 hours before quitting for whatever reason, only to pick it back up just recently as I got a random urge to play it for the channel. Because I stopped the game so early, and also because it has plot recaps when loading your file, which is really helpful by the way that more games should do, I didn't think I was missing much in terms of the story. It wasn't until I watched other reviews where people mentioned the war, where I was just like, wait, there's a war in this game? What? That's how early the war starts becoming a non-factor. I mean, I guess it briefly gets brought up in some conversations, but you just don't feel the gravity or significance of it at all. On a similar note, the same things happen to some of the villains and characters. I think Seed has a really cool design and has this mysterious aura about him, but unfortunately, overall, I just feel his potential gets wasted. Same with characters like Desert Claw, who I thought would have more of an impact on the story. Honestly, the plot as a whole just kind of feels clumsily put together. I just feel like they had a hard time deciding on what they wanted the main focus to be. Certain parts of the game feel a little episodic in nature, and sometimes I found myself asking, so what's the main goal here? I feel like it keeps shifting around. So yeah, if I haven't made it obvious enough by now, the story in Rogue Galaxy and how it's told isn't really its strong suit. What it lacks there though, it more than makes up for it with its immersive atmosphere and memorable locations. The aesthetic of Rogue Galaxy is just so fucking cool and easily my favorite thing about the whole game. It just does a fantastic job at really making you feel like you're an adventurous space pirate traveling throughout the galaxy. The environments are also varied and rich with detail. Sometimes I found myself just standing in certain spots with a specific camera angle, just taking in the sights and soaking up the ambiance. The first time I got to Zerard, I remember running across the central walkways and just thinking to myself, wow, this is fucking awesome. There's just so much gorgeous scenery to take in. I love that so many walks of life are represented as well. Being that it is the capital of the galaxy, it only makes sense that so many different alien species would be there. It really gives a lot of life to the world of Rogue Galaxy. Considering that Rogue Galaxy was a late-era PS2 game, the graphics still look awesome and hold up really well to this day. That cel-shaded style along with the vibrant colors just aged like wine. Visuals is only one aspect of setting a good atmosphere though, with the other being music, and thankfully the music here absolutely delivers. This game gets a lot of praise for many things, but one thing I feel that it doesn't get enough love for is the OST. A lot of the tracks are just so chill and relaxing. It makes exploring around a lot more satisfying than it would have been otherwise. To use Gerard again as an example, the music here is just so awesome and really sets a distinct mood. Then, even better, when you step into the Galaxy Public Corporation office, you're greeted with this really serene track. It's so calming. It might be my favorite one of the whole game, actually. The use of chanting and vocals in tracks is done really beautifully as well. Some scenes are made that much more impactful due to this. The ending of Chapter 6 instantly comes to mind. The cutscene direction here is just masterful, and its impact is only further enhanced by the music going on during it. My words can only do it so much justice though, so I think it would be better just to see it and hear it for yourself. This scene lasts about 5 minutes total, so here's a random minute taken from it early on. Enjoy.
We have no more use for you. Scram!
I'm afraid that's my line, Zax.
What are you trying to do?
You tricked me. Datron has the tablet now, but this war won't end. Am I right?
So what if you are?
You know my history. You used that promise to lure me in just so you could use me.
So what? What do you hope to accomplish right now? Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter anymore. You're about to die anyway. Kill him.
It's over.
Every time I close my eyes, it's all I see. I am haunted by
The Cowboy Bebop vibes are just off the chart here. So damn cool. Unfortunately, the scene does have a poignant end, but it just helps it make it that much more memorable. It absolutely gutted me upon watching it though. Such a mixed feeling of sadness and anger with him doing all this badass stuff, only just to die by the little bitch dude doing little bitch things. Fuck that guy. But yeah, the song choice in combination with the way this scene is presented actually makes me care about a character that doesn't really have a lot of screen time prior to this. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about the other deaths in this game, but this one I can. It's the best scene in the entire game. I think the use of different camera angles and occasionally switching to the first-person perspective of Gale really does a lot to help certain parts of the scene feel a lot more engaging than they may have been otherwise. It goes back to what I said earlier in the video about how the cutscene direction in this game is just so fucking good. For these 5 minutes, I was absolutely drawn in with my full attention. It was the point I remember saying, you know, despite some of the flaws that it has, there's something really special about this game. And thank God there is, because, man, does this game have some flaws, especially in the gameplay department. While Rogue Galaxy plays out like a traditional JRPG for the most part, the battle system does not, and instead plays out like an action RPG. It's really fun at first, but after a while you start to notice some of the flaws. You fight with 3 characters in your party, but you can only control 1 at a time, obviously, with the option to switch freely between them. This is pretty standard for the system, no complaints here. Each character has their own main and sub-weapon, the main weapon usually being melee-based, and the sub-weapon being ranged, in most cases at least. Attacks deplete your endurance, and when your endurance runs out, you have to wait for it to charge back up before you can do anything else. This includes even using items. To make it charge faster, you can guard, and blocking an enemy attack when doing so instantly fills it back up. This prevents you from being able to just spam attacks over and over again, turning it into a hack and slash, so I get it. Now, on the surface, the battle system isn't bad at all. It's just how they decided to balance it is where it falls short. Each character has special abilities that can attack all enemies on the field, and these are ridiculously OP. It takes away the challenge from every random battle and pretty much makes them trivial. Most random battles can seriously just be boiled down to start fight, open up menu, select desert wind, end fight. That's it. Even later in the game, when enemies have more HP, this is still an issue because even if you don't kill them with that first group attack, you can just spam another one right after that from another character, most surely killing them in either that second or third attempt. But don't these abilities use AP, so surely you can't just spam them all the time, right? Wrong. Or half wrong at least. Yes, they do use AP, and also yes, you can still spam them all the time. There's so much different recovery items in this game, and with money being given out like candy, it's pretty easy to stay stocked up on a plethora of items, acquiring way more than you'll ever need. There's no reason not to spam abilities, because by the time you get to the next shop and can buy more items, you won't even have used a fraction of what you have so far. By the end of the game, I was so maxed out on different forms of recovery items that the only challenge from boss battles came from seeing how many times I had to open up the menu and spam health items. Outside of a couple occasions earlier on, I was never really in fear of dying. The strategy in bosses pretty much just came down to use an ability that increases all of your group's attack, use Illusion Sword with Jaster, then just wail away for 1 or 2 minutes until they're dead. I started running away from a lot of encounters later in the game, yet I was still OP enough that the final boss was still a joke. That's another thing. Despite this being an action RPG, there are still random battles, and these happen all the time. Even in places that they shouldn't occur in the first place. Like, even in the towns in Rosa and Vidan, you can still trigger random battles. Why? Is that really necessary? If this was just so you still have the ability to train and prevent yourself from potentially being underleveled against an upcoming boss fight, surely they still could have thought a better way than this, with maybe having an area outside of town where you can fight enemies, not the town itself. To an extent, it makes a lot of the game feel like a dungeon crawler, and dungeons are already long enough on their own, so this just seems unnecessary. On a random side note, some of the dungeons in this game drag on way too long. The prison, the factory, and Gladiolus Towers all suck, especially the latter because it basically makes you repeat the same thing twice. Anyway, the random battles in towns just suck because it discourages exploration in a game that should be all about exploration. I will say though that it is nice that you have a 100% success rate when escaping from random battles, and even when you do engage in battle, killing all the enemies, prompting the victory screen to pop up, I like how you can still move during this, saving yourself a little bit of time moving to the next location. The only enemies you can't run from in the game though are mimics, and god, these things suck. They're always a lot stronger than the other enemies around the area and can absolutely wreck your party, making you use a lot of health items. They're just super annoying, and unfortunately, they're not the only annoying enemies in the game either. A good amount of enemies have gimmicks of sorts that must be exploited in order to damage them. Some of them aren't that bad, like just jumping on top of them or using a charged up attack to break their shield, but others are more annoying by only being able to damage a specific part of their body, or even worse, them having a barrier requiring one specific gun in the entire game in order to break that barrier before you can damage them. This forces you to open up your menu to change your sub-weapon, just so you can damage them. And right after doing so, you're just gonna switch back to whatever gun you were using right before that. It's pointless, a waste of time, and doesn't add any extra challenge. Anytime these enemies came up, I just ran away, not gonna lie. Speaking of battle mechanics, some of them just seem underutilized as well. In the very first boss fight, you get a gun that allows you to shoot platforms so you can climb on top of them and attack certain points of the enemy, but after this first fight, you maybe use this like a couple times in the entire game, with one of them being the final boss. It just kinda seemed random, to be honest. There's also the throwing mechanic as well, allowing you to either pick up enemies and throw them, or pick up items and throw them at the enemies instead. I mean, I guess this does some damage, but did anyone ever really use this? It just never really seemed necessary. I don't know. The burning strikes really didn't seem worth it either. These are special attacks you can occasionally do by collecting burning chips on the ground, where you then go into a special sequence and have to put in an order of timed button combinations in order to complete the attack. These just take up time and don't really do a crazy amount of damage either, so outside of boss battles, I just stopped using them after a while. So yeah, as you can see, overall the gameplay in Rogue Galaxy just has a lot of issues that I feel could have been improved upon. They had a good base formula going, but just needed to execute it better in my opinion. Now, I've been rambling about my grievances with this game for a while now that you might think I hate it, but that's not the case at all. I love it actually. It's just a little disappointing because the setting and concept has so much potential, and ultimately, I don't feel that it 100% lives up to that potential. It does in some aspects, for sure, but just not as an overall experience, as it does fall short in some areas. The atmosphere, the visuals, and the sound are all absolutely top-notch and easily some of the very best on the PS2. Speaking of sound though, I haven't even talked about how incredible the voice acting is in this game yet. I mean, you got fucking Eric from Boy Meets World as the main dude Jaster.
What'd you say?
That completely sold me as a kid. I was so blown away when I found that out. Best of all though, as if this game didn't ooze enough Cowboy Bebop vibes already, it even has the legendary Steve Bloom voicing Zegrum, aka Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop, and countless other anime. He voices Zegrum perfectly and always draws me in whenever he speaks.
Rune speeds up the process of evolution and turns living things into beasts.
The rest of the cast does a fantastic job as well. I won't go in all of them though. The characters themselves have really memorable designs. I really love how they're filled with all types of species throughout the galaxy, once again making the universe feel fleshed out. In terms of personality, however, they're a little one note. I would have loved to see them get a lot more development outside of their individual chapters and the final hours of the game. Honestly, the characters kind of represent how I feel about the game itself. Awesome aesthetic, they look and sound great, but ultimately there's just a little bit of wasted potential there, I feel. In a lot of ways, it lives up to it, but in some other ways, it doesn't. Would I still recommend Rogue Galaxy though? For certain type of gamers, absolutely. Despite my gripes with it, I still loved it and had a great time. There were some times I found myself playing for hours, not realizing how long I had been playing. For gamers that are all about the atmosphere and ambiance, there's a lot to love here. If you value a balanced battle system though, or an incredibly well-told story, then, well, I don't know, you might be on the fence on this one. As an actual game, Rogue Galaxy does disappoint in some aspects, but in terms of creating a unique, wondrous, beautiful world filled with gorgeous locations and creativity everywhere, then Rogue Galaxy is one of the very best out there and succeeds in ways that very few JRPGs ever have. Alright, and that about wraps up this retrospective over Rogue Galaxy. Thanks for watching everyone, we hope you enjoyed it. Please consider liking or subscribing if you did. What are your guys' thoughts on this game? Let us know with a comment below. It's such a huge ass game that honestly I didn't even get to cover everything that I wanted to. It was mainly just side quest stuff though, with stuff like the Insectron battles, the factory, the weapon crafting system, and yeah, stuff like that. I really gotta give Level 5 a lot of props for all the time, efforts, and heart that they put into this project. It really shows. As always, huge thank you to our Patreon supporters. Your generosity is very much appreciated. Other than that, hope you have an awesome day everyone. This is Gaming Productions. Until next time.